Hello friends and greetings for the day. Welcome back to another tutorial on ISTQB Foundation Certification. We are in chapter 1 talking about the fundamentals of testing and shall be continuing ahead with our same segment, that is 1.4, the test activities, testware and test roles. And now today we will be covering the part 2 of this, which talks about the remaining aspects, that is testware and the test roles in context. Well, to get started with, the very first thing we are talking today about is the testware, and this testware basically refers to any such documentation which are the output of test activities. We have discussed about the test activities in our previous tutorial, which were referred to as planning, analysis, design, implementation, execution, and completion. Now the question is, what are the set of deliverables and documentation what a testing team should be creating at a part of this particular process? So today in this particular tutorial, we'll be helping you to understand the high-level set of documentation which we generally tend to create as a part of our test process. Indeed, at this point of time, we also like to let you know that it's not necessary that these are the only documentation which you create. Sometimes it could be less than that, sometimes it could be more than that as well, depending on all the factors which influence your test process. So let's have a look on this. What exactly does that even mean? So very first thing is, testware is created as an output work product from the activities, which are the test activities of the test process. There is a significant variation in how different organizations produce, shape, name, organize, and manage their work products. So of course, it may not be exactly the same, but things may be around the same thing. Now, proper configuration management, which basically ensures consistency and integrity of the work products. The following list of work products is not exhaustive, which simply means one thing, that this is not the complete list of things which may happen across organizations, but we are just trying to bring up those confined list of items which are quite common among different industries. So to kickstart with, the very first thing is of course the planning phase. As a part of the planning phase, the work products which we generally create or we include is test plan, test schedule, the risk register, which means the risk analysis outcomes, and entry and exit criteria, which are very commonly created and as a documentation as a part of the test planning. Also, risk register is basically a list of risks together with risk likelihood, risk impact, and information about the risk mitigation. Again, you don't have to worry about at this point of time that what is risk likelihood, impact, and mitigation steps. We will be talking about this in chapter 5 in more detail, just because we just don't want to dump everything to you right in the chapter 1 and do nothing in chapter 5. We just relevantly will go and talk about them in the right chapters. Test schedule, which includes the test schedule, which is basically the risk register and entry exit criteria, are often a part of the test plan itself. That means they may not be sometimes created as a separate documentation, but given that you will have a test plan document already created, then that would be just the part of it. Similarly, if I move on to the next part, that is test monitoring and control work products. These include the test progress report, documentation of control directives, and the risk information. Again, indeed, as a part of monitoring, we are keeping an eye on different matrices as a part of the progress of the life cycle. At any point of time, we may create a test progress report specifically at certain milestones. For example, if you're talking about agile methodology, I can create a progress report every single sprint and share it with different stakeholders of our organization to make sure that they just get the point and get to know that what exactly testing team is progressing with and what are the blockers and many other things. However, again, as I mentioned earlier, the reports will be discussed in detail with the example in chapter 5. So if we talk about the next phase, which is test analysis, the work products which are included here, generally the prioritized test conditions, which includes the acceptance criteria as well, and defect report regarding the defects in the test basis. So here it is more of like static testing defects, which is more of like as you review the requirements, as you review the designs, as you review the other work products which are basis for testing, you may have found certain defects related to that. So all those defects will be a part of this particular documentation or this particular phase, giving you the information about the list of defects. In turn, these defects also help us understand the effectiveness of the review, because if the reviews are not effective, We will look forward to improve it over a period of time. So certainly these defects inputs will add a lot of value towards the improvement of the static testing process as well. Continuing on the next, we do have our next phase as test analysis, where test analysis work products include the prioritized test cases. That means not the test cases which we write, but at the end of the day, this will be highly prioritized. That means what are the high priority test cases, medium priority test cases, and low priority test cases. Also, as a part of it, you will also produce test charters. Test charters are basically a log sheet which is used in the exploratory testing, which is one type of informal test technique, and we'll talk about this in chapter 4 in more detail. Then we do have test data requirements and the test environment requirements. So anything related to requirements of data, anything related to the environment, if you're creating any sort of documentation, that will be an outcome of test design phase. Also, when we talk about the next phase, that is test implementation, the work products what we produce here are generally the test procedure, the automated test scripts, the test suites, the data, the execution schedule, the environment elements. And if I talk about the example of test environment elements, it includes stub, driver, simulator, and service virtualization. So again, it's not necessary that every single organization can really go ahead and create a documentation on environment. We may just have it as an environment altogether, but it may be useful for many other teams or different stakeholders to perform other testing. Then we may go ahead and document it, because I, as a functional team member, I may be aware of what exactly environment is, but my non-functional testing team does not know about it. So I may have to communicate something to them, right? So in that context, you may go ahead and create a documentation which talks about what the environment comprises of and what does it do. So in that context, it certainly helps you to understand what exactly are the environment details. Continuing next, of course, the test execution phase, it returns us with the documentations like test logs and defect reports. Test logs are the execution reports which you will have, of course, during the execution, and if in case of any failures you do report defects, so the defect reports will also be one of the work products from here. Finally, talking about the test completion work products basically includes the test completion report, action items for improvement of subsequent projects or iterations, documented lessons learned, and change request if any, right? Which is basically a PBI, product backlog items, or certainly the retrospective will become my lessons learned here. So we may look forward to document it to contain all the information which helps us to improve in our upcoming cycles. So put together, these are all the work products which we generally tend to create as a part of the testing lifecycle, but you don't have to really by heart them. A simple straightforward tip is to help you remember this as, even if you remember the process, that is the test activities from the previous tutorial, you know exactly what work products will be there. So all you have to just remember is what are the set of activities we do, and as a part of the activity, of course, there is a byproduct, and that byproduct is what you call it as a documentation. So if you compare it back with the next previous tutorial, you will pretty much understand that yes, every single activity is turning into a documentation, and those are the document itself. So it will be easy to remember for you from the examination point of view. In continuation to the same, we are also trying to talk about the significance of traceability. Traceability in simple words means that we are talking about mapping a basis with that of the work product. What is the example? The example says that if I have created test cases from a particular set of requirement, it is my responsibility to connect both of them or map both of them so that at any point of time, if I have to measure the coverage achieved on the requirement, it will be easy for me to determine that. Of course, virtually I can go ahead and talk about the percentage coverage achieved on the requirement, but in real-time project, especially when it comes to audits, they may ask you for a reference that how did you derive these number of test cases? Which requirement did you refer? And I don't see a link associated with that. So we must always have traceability between any test basis to that of any work product, which we just covered a moment ago. So no matter, even if you're talking about test plan, a test plan should be mapped to the respective version of the project plan, because it would be necessary for many benefits of having traceability. So let's understand more about what could be the benefit of traceability. At the same time, a little deep dive on what do we mean by traceability. In order to implement effective test monitoring and control, it is important to establish and maintain traceability throughout the test process between the basis elements, tests were associated with these elements. That means it is really important to do it between both of them. Example, the test conditions, risk, test cases, or even if I talk about the test results and detected defects should be linked back to their respective parents. Accurate traceability supports coverage evaluation, so it is very useful if measurable coverage criteria are defined in the test basis. The coverage criteria can function as key performance indicators to drive the activities that allow to what extent the test objectives have been achieved. So I think that totally makes sense that when it comes to the measure of coverages and achievement of your goal or to certain percentage measurement that how much we are done, how much more to go, the traceabilities will help you determine the same. So the examples included here are basically the traceability of the test cases to that of requirements can verify that the requirements are covered by the test cases, whereas with this we call it as RTM, requirement traceability matrix. And the second is traceability of test results to risk can be used to evaluate the level of residual risk in the test object. So yes, at this point of time, given that we are not talking about risk in detail yet, we can just let you know that yes, test results helps us to determine if the risk has been mitigated or at least the level of risk has been reduced from high to low or high to medium. And it's not that the traceability just helps you with the coverage. There are multiple other benefits of having traceability within your project or within your organizations. So some of these benefits are listed here. For example, a good traceability makes it possible to determine the impact of changes. For example, if tomorrow requirements gets modified, then I would not be able to judge if I don't have traceability. I will not be able to judge if my existing test cases are still enough or I need to add more test cases to cover the change in the requirement. Just by having traceability, you will be able to see what are the test cases written for it. And as far as the test cases you can see, you can determine that whether you need to add something more or the existing test cases will be enough. So traceability will just give you establishment of the link between the requirement and the test cases. And anytime you want to see what test cases are written for this requirement, it will be very easy to do so. At the same time, if I talk about the next example, it says facilitates test audits and helps meet IT governance criteria. Auditors, of course, will look forward to understand that if you did anything in the entire test process, why did you do that and how is it benefiting the project? Because even if you're writing test cases, an auditor would look forward to understand that how these test cases are helping me in the project. So if you don't have traceability to that of the requirement, it may not be justifiable, right? And IT governance criteria simply means that at some point of time, the IT governance criteria requires you to link things together in terms of having being measured. So as far as like anything is being linked, then it do make sense that what belongs where or how they are related to each other. For an example, if I have written 40 test cases for a requirement, an exactly same requirement, which is like other requirement with the same complexity and same priority, I've written only 20 test cases. Now the scenario would be that I just have another critical requirement, whereas the other requirement is also critical, but both of them have different number of test cases. Now I can go and talk about that requirement 1 has a risk associated, whereas requirement 2 doesn't have a risk associated. So it does not really bother you any further when it comes to the governance criteria, that how did you decide to go different proportionality of test cases when it comes to similar type of requirements. So that's one of the examples to talk about how traceability can save your day in terms of IT governance criteria. Also to talk about good traceability makes test progress and completion reports more easily understandable by including the status of the test basis elements. That means a business stakeholder will not be able to understand that what did you do by doing 20 executions until unless I have a traceability back to the requirement, because they are least bothered about your test cases. They are mainly bothered about how much requirement has been completed at that point of time. So from the execution, you can derive it back to the requirement that, hey, I did 50 executions today, but these 50 executions have covered 20% of requirement. 20% of requirement, and that totally makes sense to a business, right? The next one we have is, of course, this can also be assistable in communicating the technical aspects of testing to stakeholders in an understandable manner, and traceability provides information to assess product quality, capability of process, and project progress against business goals. So again, if you further deep dive, you would also be able to understand that it is very, very beneficial in terms of determining how is my progress happening on the project level, what is my process capabilities, because of having many other information associated there. So you currently may not really need that explanation because it's covered more in detail at the manager level, but on a high level, they just wanted to let you know that traceability is just not limited to coverage measurement. It can even help at the organization level to build a better aspect altogether. Well, moving on to the next one, of course, the last segment of this particular topic, that is roles in testing. And here we are just trying to highlight to you that what are the standard roles when it comes to testing within an organization. So it's very simple and easy to understand that in this syllabus, we just consider two principal roles of testing. That is, one is test management and one is the test engineer. So it may be very easy to understand and correlate because every single project has just two important roles. Everyone else is a test engineer and there'll be one test lead or test manager. But when it comes to our real-time designations and roles and responsibility, you may see a lot of different designations awarded to people, like you are a lead engineer, you are a junior engineer, you are a senior software engineer, you might be a technical lead. But for a project, you are either a manager or you're just an engineer. So ISTQB does not differentiate between the designations. They say your responsibilities are generally determined by the designation which we have understand, that is either you are a test manager or you're just a tester. Okay, so we just have two standard roles. However, when it comes to the activities and tasks assigned to these two roles, they depend on factors such as project and product context, the skills of the people in the roles, and the organizations as well. For example, the test management role takes overall responsibility for the test process, the test team, and leadership of the test activities. The test management role is mainly focused on the activities of test planning, test monitoring and control, and test completion. The way in which the test management role is carried out and varies depending on the context. So it's not that it's just that tester and test manager are exactly the same. The manager will lead the overall team and take the ownership on defining, determining, planning, scheduling, selecting, etc. And whereas the QC part, that is like performing all the activities, will be done by the test engineer. So there's a quick example right here. So for example, in agile software development, some of the test management tasks may be handled by the agile team. The tasks that span multiple teams or the entire organization may be performed by the test managers outside of the development team, right? Now, on the other hand, if I talk about the testing role, it takes overall responsibility of the engineering, which is the technical aspect of testing. The testing role is mainly focused on activities of analysis, design, test implementation, and test execution, which in turn means that going through the requirements, writing the test conditions, the test cases, preparing the automation test scripts, the execution schedule, prioritization of the test cases, these are all done by the test engineers, not the test manager. Manager is more from the perspective of the process. Also, different people may take on these roles at different times. That means within the team, people can go ahead and take ownership on different responsibilities. For example, the test management role can be performed by a team leader, by a test manager, by a development manager, etc., depending on the availability of the right person within the organization. Okay, and it is also possible for one person to take on the role of testing and test management at the same time. That means in a small scale organization, it is quite often common that a person who will be playing the role of team lead can also be a tester within the project. So I think that pretty much makes a lot of sense, that what exactly are the distribution of responsibilities between a test manager and test engineer. And at some point of time, we do understand that the realistic distribution of the work and responsibilities are slightly different between the members. So that's all what we had from here. But of course, you have to stick to the syllabus in order to answer a question. So just stick to that. So that's all from this particular tutorial, team. Should you have anything else, feel free to comment below. I'm always there to address your queries and answer them well. Till then, keep learning, keep exploring, keep understanding the context. Thanks for watching the video, team, and happy learning.